Alright, so my name is Tom Smith. I'm a senior cognitive science and anthropology major at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. And what I'm presenting here is a talk which I originally gave at the annual meeting of the American Oral History Association. And I presented this talk at a panel at 9 a.m. on October 31st, 2010. And since it was so early in the morning and so late in the conference, I was asked to record a video version of this so that people who couldn't necessarily make it to the original panel would be able to see the tool that I presented. So first, a little background on the project that this is a part of. It's part of the East Baltimore Oral History Project, which basically undertakes to document the history of a community, Middle East Baltimore, which is in the process of being quote-unquote redeveloped. This basically involves the residents of that community being moved to various areas around the city and also in the surrounding county. So basically the idea of the project, which is a 5-year effort, is to document the history of this community through a major oral history project. We're up to over 100 interviews now. At the time that I undertook the project I'm presenting here, we had about 30 in the collection that averaged about 2 hours each. So we're talking a huge amount of audio, and we really wanted to make that available to this community, as well as to researchers and other people who might be able to find it useful. So the question that I asked in presenting this on the 31st was, what does access really mean in this context? If these audio interviews are made available, but they're made available by being placed into some sort of repository library, is that really accessibility? Is that really availability for people in this community who have limited resources and are spread around geographically? Really, is that meeting our mandate of sharing what we find with the people who contributed to this project? We felt that it wouldn't, so we decided to develop basically an online tool which would allow people in the community, as well as, again, other interested people, to be able to go onto a web-based oral history player and see any interview in the collection, listen to the full audio, and also to be able to contribute to the collection in a meaningful way. So just to initially present the challenge we were faced with in doing this, again, we had almost 60 hours of audio that we needed to present. We had a diverse set of users with a lot of different technological backgrounds and goals and motivations in using this player. Also, we had a minimal budget. I had about $4,000 grant from the Center for Educational Resources at Johns Hopkins to do this over the course of one summer, and we had $0 for equipment from that grant. So the minimal budget was a major constraint and something that I'll address throughout this. So in order to design an online tool that could be used to present the findings from this project, we basically took a strategy of user-centered design. So we looked at what kinds of different users would want to access this collection and what would they need to be able to do with it. So the first user type that we defined were casual users, which would be members of the community who maybe wanted to hear stories about their neighborhood or present an interview that they had taken part in to family members, to future generations. Generally would have a relatively low technological background and wouldn't necessarily need a lot of detailed information about the interviews or detailed search tools. Teachers and educators were distinguished by the fact that they would need to be able to plan a lesson in advance using the materials that were in this collection. Whereas researchers, we thought, would need to have a lot of detailed provenance data on the individual interviews, as well as the ability to do some pretty detailed search across the collection for different kinds of content. So what we ended up creating, what I ended up implementing over the course of that summer, was basically a web-based, flash-based audio player that involves some extra features like tagging and access to transcripts, since transcripts were created in conjunction with the interviews that we did. So what I'm going to do basically is just give a demonstration of the player, talk a little bit about some other features and ways to implement it. So this is our main website. You can click here to load the player, and here's the main page. And as you can see, you can just scroll through these interviews, and they're organized alphabetically by the last name. You can also search for a particular interview based on the name of the informant or some other keyword about that interview. Now when you click on this, you get to the main player page, and as you can see, you can start the audio playing. You have access to the full audio of the interview. You can also click on these tags down here, and that will actually advance the audio player to the timestamp in the interview where that tag was added. I can also search within these tags, and it's instantaneous when I do that. And again, clicking on one of these will advance to the timestamp. Now another feature I have is I can go over to View Transcript over here, and that pulls up the full transcript of the interview. And again, I can scroll through here, and if I see something that's particularly interesting to me, I can click on it. These are all also time-stamped, so that'll again advance me to that particular point in the interview. And the idea here is that people can go seamlessly between the textual content and the actual audio. Now here I have a lot more detailed information about the interview itself. For most of the files, for most of the interviews in here, I'd have access to the original MP3 file and a consent form. Also information about when the interview was conducted, a lot of things that would be useful for a researcher. Now another great feature here is that I can search across the entire collection for a particular keyword. So say I enter the word Hopkins. Now I can see every tag and every transcript which references that particular keyword. And again, clicking on any of these will open the correct interview and advance me to the correct timestamp. So I can basically query the entire collection for a particular piece of content and see everything presented all in this one place. Now another feature here that's really useful is this is not a static thing. Anybody can go in and contribute to this collection. So for example, if I'm listening to this interview here and I hear something that's of particular interest to me, I can actually go down here to add and edit tags, and I can sign in. Now anyone can register for an account with the system. And once I've logged in here, again, I can advance the audio to the point which I found interesting. And then I just hit this Tag Here button. And I can enter some descriptive text about that particular timestamp. And I can choose a type if I want to. It's optional. Now when I hit Save Tag, I've created this new tag down here. And again, clicking on that will advance me to the timestamp. And it's immediately visible for me once it's approved by an admin. It's visible for anybody and also fully searchable. Now another feature of this is the tag collection. And again, this was intended for educators who might want to create a collection of tags in advance, for example, in a lesson plan, and then be able to load this player. Basically, they can create this collection which is saved. They can sign back in, and for example, if they were in front of their class now, they could go through their lesson plan, and when they wanted to illustrate a particular point with a snippet of audio from the collection, they could simply click on that tag. And again, they could immediately play that audio for their class. And of course, if they didn't find tags initially that they liked, they could always go and add the tags and then add those to their collection. So another couple of features that I want to mention that weren't immediately visible in the last section, this is all fully integrated with Google Analytics for tracking. So basically any interaction with the player is registered, and you can get very detailed information on everything from which interviews people are clicking on to the different kinds of searches they're performing, what keywords they're searching for. So we really wanted to have a lot of visibility about how this tool is being used. Also, tags and transcripts, basically any kind of content which is added here, can be exported as a standard subtitle file, and it's all compatible with screen readers for people that have a need for that sort of thing. Final point that I want to make is that this is something which is all open source. So all of the code that we developed for this project is all released into the public domain. And all of the software which was used to create it, or anything that it uses to function, is all open source as well. So anybody can basically take what we've done here and implement it for any purpose, and then make any changes to it which they feel would be useful for their own context. So we really want this to be something that other people are able to use now that we've developed it. again, going back to that idea of a resource constraint, this was designed to use one server. It uses a technology called pseudo-streaming, which eliminates the need to use an Akamai server or a Flash Media server to stream these files. So basically, you could go out and rent the server space that you would need in order to fully implement this for about $10 a month. Also, of course, it can be implemented on an institutional server very easily. And the final point is that it includes a full backend for administration. So once it's actually been implemented, doing things like adding new interviews, changing transcript text, or adding metadata can all be done through this web interface, which is basically very easy to use for people with a low level of technical proficiency. So the final thing here is the website where you can actually see this in action for our particular project. It's eboh.jhu.edu. Here also is my email address, tsmith96@jhu.edu. Now, in terms of implementing this, it's not yet been released formally as an open source project. But again, anybody can feel free to email me for access to the code. And sometime in the future, this is being recorded 2 days after the conference, but sometime in the next few months, we hope to make it available as a formal open source project so that other people can take what we've done and easily implement it, again, in their own context. Thank you.